How did a barren Mexican territory populated by a group of frontier settlers overthrow the nation of Mexico and become the independent Republic of Texas? How does a skirmish over a cannon start a revolution? How does an old wooden building in a town named Washington come to be known as the place where Texas became Texas? The story behind Washington on the Brazos is one of pioneers, dictators, battles, bravery, and the Texas fight for independence.
In 1820, the Spanish government encouraged U.S. citizens to settle in the rough and sparsely populated Mexican terrain near the Brazos River. 1 year later, Mexico gained its independence from Spain, and by 1835, Stephen F. Austin had led 300 U.S. families into Texas. Although the Mexican government encouraged the settlers, it was under the condition that they convert to Catholicism. However, the settlers were primarily Protestants from the southern United States. American settlers soon outnumbered Mexicans, and in 1829, the Mexican government sent Manuel de Mier y Terán, a respected military Mexican officer, to report on the Texas immigration issue. Terán recommended an increased military presence to discourage more American immigrants coming. The Mexican government, at the time led by political flip-flopping dictator Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, was full of bureaucratic inconsistencies and instability. Texas settlers had had enough of government edicts that dissolved their state legislatures and militias. When the Federal Republican Constitution of 1824 was abolished, Texas independence looked even more appealing. Stephen F. Austin, the man who championed the settling of Texas, was thrown in prison for his objections to the Mexican government's treatment of Texans and its refusal to grant Texas Mexican statehood. In 1835, Mexican dictator Santa Anna made matters worse when he demanded the return of cannons from the American settlers of Gonzales. These cannons were given to the settlers as a way to defend from Native American attacks. In response to Santa Anna's demand, the settlers fired the cannon and are credited with the first battle of the Texas Revolution. A group of volunteer Texans, led by General Sam Houston, captured the town of San Antonio. Houston later ordered the destruction and abandoning of the fort as he believed the city was not worth holding. Remember the Alamo? Colonel James Bowie, knowing that thousands of Santa Anna's forces were closing in, stayed behind with 140 Texas soldiers to fortify the fort and stave off the Mexican army. Bowie hoped that by staying behind, he would give General Houston more time to gather the forces needed to defeat Santa Anna. Meanwhile, on the Brazos River in the town of Washington, a committee of Texans gathered in a large wooden building to draft the document that would make Texas, Texas. Why Washington? The town was centrally located, with access to the river and well-established roads, which made it convenient for the 59 delegates, representing each Texas settlement, to meet. The building was safe and a large enough space to meet during a time of uprising. Convention President Richard Ellis appointed a committee to draft the Texas Declaration of Independence, although George Childress is credited with authorship. On March 2, 1836, amidst updates from the Alamo, Washington on the Brazos became the site of the new nation's first lasting government and where Texas became Texas.
Over the next several days, the 59 delegates unanimously approved the Texas Declaration of Independence from Mexico. The declaration followed a similar format to the United States Declaration of Independence. The Texas Declaration cited grievances with the Mexican government regarding life, liberty, and also an emphasis on property. Texas was comprised of American Southerners who felt it was their right to own slaves, despite slavery being illegal in Mexico. Other grievances included freedom of religion, public education, military oppression and tyranny, failure to protect against Native American violence, and piratical attacks on commerce.
Would you like to visit Washington on the Brazos but can't find the time with your busy class schedule? Download the Texas 1836 mobile app and take a virtual tour of the area, learn the history, visit the buildings, and even interact with townspeople.